Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers and our monthly author showcase. I am your host, Peter Stockwell, along with Mark Miller. This is part 2 of a special review and reprise of what we have been doing for the last year as part of our Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers activities in conjunction with the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios.
Peter and I have been doing this for over a year now, so we decided we'd sit down and kind of go over with the BCAT audience a reprise and kind of a trip down memory lane of everything we've done, and also talk about what we'd like to do in the future.
We would also like to discuss with our BCAT audience what our overall concept, our mission of Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers is, and what we will be doing in the future. For this endeavor involves all of those people in the BCAT Public Access Television audience.
First of all, we're going to do a little bit of a trip down a memory lane. Our very first broadcast as an introduction was a panel discussion between myself, Peter, Iona Buick, who's one of the founding individuals of the KLAW group, and Ingemar Anderson, who is a local publisher and printer at Kitsap Publishing and Printing in Poseville, Washington.
And we have a little clip of how that first show began. In this initial episode, I will be using a form of a panel discussion in order to introduce members of KLAW who are behind this production. Seated off to my left are the KLAW members, Iona Buick, Mark Miller, and Ingemar Anderson. Starting with ladies first, if you would introduce yourself and then present us a quick overview of your current activities and endeavors in this literary world we live in.
Hi, my name's Iona Buick, and I'm a screenwriter. Been produced locally, and currently working with the KLAW, the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers group, to help people learn how to market their books.
And next we have Mark Miller.
Hello, my name's Mark Miller. I'm also a local author. And one of these people, starting on my second career after like 30 years in law enforcement, decided to go back and actually try to get into writing and journalism like I had originally planned years and years and years ago. So I got involved with KLAW about a year and a half ago, and first met Iona at that time, and since that time we've been working as a group trying to promote each other and promote other writers and authors in the local area.
And next we have Ingemar Anderson, our publisher amongst us.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Ingemar Anderson is my name. We have a publishing company in Poseville. But a little bit to my background, our family was always in literary work and creative work, so this is very familiar to me, but I haven't done that for most of my career. I was a consultant for software and for business, and just 5 years ago I started my own business for printing, and we started to print books, and then I got very quickly into publishing, and we have around 50 authors right now we work with, 50 active authors. We have 80 on our database, and it's really great to work with authors. And by the way, I'm very honored to be here with KLAW. This is a real great platform. I think this is going to have a great future, and I look forward to all the future series that come up.
Well, thank you. And of course, myself, I am Peter Stockwell. I'm a retired middle school teacher out of the Bremerton School District. I got into the idea of writing books because I had an idea in my head and the characters wanted out. I was getting near to retirement age, and so I began with my first book, Motive, and I wrote that. And it took me about 6 years to write this book. I attended writing conferences in New York and Cincinnati and Seattle area, and I learned how to write a book from some of the best writers in the world and editors and agents that I met. And from that, I had the second book, which is Motivations, came about because these characters in my head said they wanted their story told of the people that were being interviewed in the first book. And then I've produced a third book, Jerry's Motives, which is, all 3 of these are now out currently, and I'm currently working on 2 more. And I would like to make this my second career. It has been a real challenge because I have found that writing the book, once you learn how to do it, can be done, and your editors will help you make sure it's a good one. And then the producing of the book, you find help for that too, and you get the printers who will print the books. And then comes the marketing, which is one of the reasons that KLAW exists, is because we Kitsap literary artists and writers need a market. And so we are trying to introduce to you, the public, all of us who are in this area, so that you find these people who have these great works of art and you have no idea who they are yet.
You know, sometimes here at BCAT, Mark and I just have fun with our interviews.
Welcome to Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers and its monthly author showcase. I am your host, Peter Stockwell. Author Denise Frasino is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. We met recently at the Pacific Northwest Booksellers trade show down in Tacoma, and she agreed to come on our show and share her current literary endeavors. I thought I would start by asking you, Denise, if you could provide our KLAW and BCAT audiences an overview of your literary and your creative history. What muse got a hold of you and implored you to write?
That muse started at a very early age, and it was propelled by my mother, actually. So I was up too many trees as a child with 3 brothers, and she decided, better do something. So she tried to get me into ballet at about age 5. Luckily for me, all the classes were full, so she got me into hula. Now, I'm talking hula in about 1957. It was brand new, and she thought, well, this will be something for Denise to do. But unfortunately, I fell in love with theater, and that was the beginning. And then when I was about 15 years old, she saw me doing the Tahitian, and well, that was the end of my hula career, right then and there. But I continued on in theater, and I've been in theater since I was about 5 years old, performing.
Available. Matt, I have published and marketed several books. This is a daunting task. What inspired you and captured or compelled you to your book, The Revenge of the Banker's Daughter?
Well, it has to go start back when I was 15. I was working my first job at a resort outside of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where our dude wrangler's big brother had been in that community. His brother was doing time in the state penitentiary for statutory rape.
Author Mark Miller is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. I have known Mark for the last couple of years, working with him to learn marketing skills, attending events in the county, and meeting with our group, KLAW. After retiring from a government law enforcement a few years ago, Mark joined me as a retired person undertaking the task of writing and publishing a novel. After a few years of revisions and editing his story, it is now available. Mark, you and I have published and marketed several books. We have learned much over the last year. Tell us about your experience writing and publishing your book, Tales of the KLAW Infestation, Free-Range Protocol.
This whole process was begun probably years ago when I actually thought I was going to be an investigative reporter and a journalist. And due to a whole bunch of odd things that happen, like always happen in life, and we're talking like very ancient history, because I'm definitely not a young whippersnapper anymore, I somehow wound up getting shifted over to law enforcement and wound up doing that for 30 years. One thing in law enforcement, of course, is, well, 2 things in law enforcement. Number one, you meet a lot of unusual people and you get involved with a lot of unusual things. And also, contrary to what Hollywood shows, there's an awful lot of writing. It's report writing, it's complaint writing, it's testifying in court, it's all that thing. So you learn definitely a style of writing. Now, it's not a fiction style of writing, but it's a style of writing. But I've always been interested in writing because of that. So once I retired, once again, by sheer happenstance, some small independent online company contacted me and said, why don't you try to publish a book through us? So I said, well, why don't I? So I went ahead and wrote an original story under another nom de plume. My current nom de plume I write under is Marshall Miller, but I also have another one that I wrote years ago just as an experiment. So you and I have had this discussion about, well, the first book you write, it's kind of like the big experiment, and usually half of it winds up in the trash can. Author and columnist Donna Lee Anderson is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. Donna is a very experienced writer and has a weekly column in the Kitsap Weekly, published by Sound Publishing. He is also the author of 2 novels and a reference book for writers. Donna, welcome to KLAW and the BCAT audience.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you for inviting me.
if you could start out with and kind of tell us about how you started writing this local column about authors, because you kind of beat us, KLAW, and BCAT.
Sorry about that. I used to live in Hansville, and I wrote a column for the Hansville, actually it was in the Kingston Community Press, called Hansville Happenings. When I moved to Paulsbo, I told my editor that I was going to be moving, but I could still write that column, and he said, no, I've got something else in mind for you. Would you be interested? And that's how I got to be Bookends columnist about a year ago.
So how many authors do you think you've interviewed so far?
I write a column a week. So far, I'm just submitted column number 49.
Okay.
All of these endeavors could not be completed without the excellent support of our Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studio staff and the management. And I would like to introduce all of these people. Charlene Burnett, who is soon to be retired, but she is the program administrator for all of this. John Raucht, who is going to be taking her place at the beginning of the year, is the projects manager. And Ben Blankenship is the talented tech guy who does all the work for us, setting up cameras and making sure that we get the right recordings so that we can get everything put together, edited, and then he makes sure to get it onto the television show so that we get to see it on Saturday nights at 6 o'clock on Channel 3 for Wave Cable or Channel 12 for Comcast.
Do you want to explain a little bit about how you do some of the actual editing yourself?
Yeah, I take all the raw materials and try to put it all together so that what we see is a polished product. And it's an experience for me now. It was fairly new when we were beginning this, and I just kept learning. And I hope I've gotten better at it, but you know, it's like writing a book. You got to keep going and never give up, because you're going to get better at what you do the longer you keep doing it. And people can offer advice, they can offer anything they want about how to make the editing better, and that has been given to me so that we have better shows. This one will be fun to do.
I know. And of course, I borrow the equipment and I break it. I borrowed some cameras from BCAT, and everything was going fine because we took it out in the field with some young friends I have, and we were kind of playing around trying to get a little bit of a feel, because I'm a writer and I'm one of these non-technical guys because of my background in law enforcement. If you give me a firearm, I know what to do with it. If you give me some basic police type of equipment, I know what to do with it. But I decided I was going to take these cameras out and figure it out. Everything was going just fine until I bring it back here, and I'm trying to put it back into the little carrying case. And so what do? I snap off one of the fittings.
That's good. That's really good.
It was great.
But I don't think that's as bad as what we did when we were at Barnes & Noble and had our panel.
Oh, yes.
And we borrowed the cameras and we had them all set up, and we had the remote mics, and you know, they had these wonderful people at the staff had taught us how to use these cameras. And so we're taking them over there and we get the cameras all set up, and I make sure that the remote control on the top of the camera is turned on for both cameras. and we have them focused in on where they're going to be we had one camera on you and Daphne,
Yeah.
and we had one camera on me and AC.
Yep.
And then we had remote mics sitting on the table so that we could speak, and then it would all be recorded. And when I got the chips out of the cameras and took them back for editing, this is what I got.
No sound.
There was no sound. Somehow the mics had been put out without turning the mic on. Even though the remotes, the receivers had been turned on, the senders had not.
But you have a little bit of film and sound from your camera. We had a friend of ours, Jeremy, who was helping us film. And so we may be able to show some of that.
Yeah, and yeah, as soon as we get that off my camera, because you see, we're using, with BCAT, we're using digital chips. And with my camera, it's an old Sony that uses high-8 tape. And so the transfer from one machine to the other, getting it onto my computer, I'm still working on that.
Okay.
But
so we just aged ourselves.
we did. We've aged ourselves really, really well. But you know, the experience of it is that we're not technophobic.
Yeah.
We're willing to go ahead. I mean, I spent 7 years when I was in the middle school teaching over in Bremerton, working as a computer technician, computer teacher, and taught kids how to take apart computers and put them together and all kinds of things. So computers don't scare me. Technological work doesn't scare me. It's just that maybe I need to have a checklist to make sure I do all the steps that I need to have done.
And now I'm going to age myself. When I was stationed in the Air Force in Okinawa, we're talking 1978, 1979. They had just started to come out with all of the Sony Betamax recorders. They were the big name in Japan, so everything was Sony. This is because it had the so-called much higher quality tape. When you played it back, it was such a much higher quality picture. So a couple of the guys had gone out and on their own had bought these big, huge cameras. And of course, in those days, you had the camera, then you had this big, huge box that was the size of a small suitcase that they would carry around over their shoulder. So we actually went out and did a training film of a security police exercise we did over a couple, 3 days. And we put it together on a little, made a little training film out of it, which wound up being used at the old, which is no longer, I don't even know if it is still in existence. It was down at the Security Police Museum down at Lackland Air Force Base as an example of what a local unit could do with local equipment and local ideas to set up and actually do training films. You know, we had this air defense training exercise and we filmed the whole thing and edited and all. That was always lots of fun because we didn't know what we were doing. This is 1978. We're playing around with Sony Betamax. Someplace, and a few years ago, I managed to get it recorded and put on a DVD, and it's kind of scratched up, but one of these days I was going to bring it up and let somebody see what we were trying to do in 1978, 79, with us sitting here trying to do this, you know.
Yeah, and when we're sitting here talking about tape and CDs and DVDs, the kids are going, huh? What? What is that? Well, you know, one of the interesting things here is that we at KLAW have a mission statement to help authors and artists become known to the public. The biggest problem we have as writers is not writing the books. It's not getting them edited or making covers or having them formatted or printed. It's getting the exposure to the artistic endeavors to the residents of Kitsap County and to the rest of the world. Marketing is our big deal. So thus we have a plan to continue this endeavor as long as the BCAT staff still love us and the viewing public supports us.
Yeah, KLAW exists for the artists and the authors, the writers, the painters, the screenwriters, and we're expanding a little bit into the film also, to help them with marketing, distribution, and publicity. What we do is we share our experiences, both positive and negative, on what's worked for us, what hasn't worked for us. We have other people come in and they share with us what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and then we let the audience decide, hey, these are all the possibilities. Let me try X, Y, or Z and see how it works for them. KLAW actually has a meeting on the first and third Wednesdays at the Family Pancake House on Wheaton Way in Bremerton at 7 p.m. That's the first and third Wednesdays. Anybody who wants to come there can show up. We're a very non-formal organization when it comes to that, and we're there strictly to exist for the help of the authors and artists and writers in the Kitsap area.
But we're not the only group that's out there. There are many independent writers and critique groups in Western Washington that meet on Saturday mornings in Silverdale and Bremerton. They meet Tuesday nights in West Bremerton. There are groups in Gig Harbor, Paulsbo, Bainbridge Island, and all around that are here for the purposes of helping those of you who are new at this business of writing a book and want to understand just what it takes to make sure that the audience is found so that they can discover the great new works that are coming out almost on a daily basis.
And one new endeavor is Vincent at 724 Studios on 724 Bay Street in Port Orchard, Washington. He set up a very nice studio down there, not only for painters, but he's been bringing in local authors to read from their works. They have formal readings. I've been to one of them the first part of September. Unfortunately, I missed this last one this last weekend. But both Peter and I are going to be doing some readings in October there also. Peter will be there on the 14th, I do believe, of October.
I'll be there on the 14th.
And I'll be there on the 28th reading from some of my works. In addition, we'll have a couple other authors there. But this is what can be done locally. It's the old idea of think outside the box and try to get people and do a little bit of networking so everybody helps each other. Plus, if the creek don't break, if the creek doesn't overflow and the dam don't break, then we're going to try to have our own very first annual Halloween show here as part of KLAW and BCAT.
We're going to be presenting the ghoulish works of some of our interviewees. They want me to do Bela Lugosi, so I've got all the proper things for it. And this show will be on the broadcast at the end of October, right around the Halloween time. Of course, you'll be able to see it at our 6 o'clock Saturday show, but I understand BCAT wants to show it at other times too. So keep in touch with the Facebook pages and for updates about what we're going to be doing in the future. We do have other authors that are going to be coming in late October for our November show. They'll be coming in late November for our December show. And then next year, we have all kinds of ideas that we have in the mix that we're working on trying to make a decision about what we want to be doing.
Including, if I don't break the equipment, we're going to try to do some little remote recordings and stuff out into the public, maybe of some of our areas, of some of the festivals and stuff that we show up at, some of the authors show up at. We do have some recordings of some of the things we did, I think, at the Blackberry Festival and Whaling Days, limited basis to kind of show what we've done in the past. But we'd also like to see the possibility, of course, working with BCAT, of getting some other type of more out there in the field filming.
Well, I hope that everyone has a pleasant day and a productive and fascinating rest of the year. And until next time, I am Peter Stockwell with the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers, in conjunction with Bremerton Kitsap Access Television, and my pal and good buddy, Mark Miller. You have a great day. Thank you.